152? Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, today is January 14th, 2014, and this is the KNKL Show, episode 152. I'm your host, Kienan Lafferty, and today is Tutorial Tuesday, where we learn to be better artists. And today we are going to be jumping into the much anticipated and much requested Riven picture, or whatever this is, facial study, you could say. This was one of the last things that I did while I was working at Riot, and has a little bit of a story behind it. We'll go into that in just a second. Before we get into the tutorial, though, however, we need to take a stroll down the lovely lane because we need a preview of things to come for tomorrow. For those of you who don't know how the lovely lane works now, anything that you submit to here, anything that you submit to the Facebook is now deemed worthy for me to draw in my own style on Wednesdays. So I may take your character and draw it in my style and present it to everyone. Lastly, before we get started, last thing I want to say is thank you to everyone who has been pledging on the Patreon. Like, I cannot believe we're almost to the next goal. Once this thing hits 175, and we send out all these prints to everybody who helps me get there. So if you're interested, join me on Patreon. All right, guys, all that crap out of the way. All that out of the way, let's get into the tutorial. Clearly, I did not warm myself up properly vocally before I started this. In fact, my voice feels kind of like it's gone. I feel like I was talking a lot today. In fact, I think I was. I was out doing a lot of errands, taking care of some prints and all that good stuff. And yeah, I was talking a lot to people. But it's another conversation for another time. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to be talking about today, guys, is just a couple techniques that really help me to kind of draw a face, right? Like coming up with a character's face, making it appear unique, and just a couple things that you guys can take and apply to your characters and draw something very similar to this. All right, so the first thing I want to talk about is let's talk about the planes of the face. This is something that we haven't talked about in a little while, and I kind of want to bring that up again. So whenever I draw a face, right? Whenever I draw a face, I'm always thinking about these lines. These lines are what you call the major kind of points of the face, and we're going to kind of break these down one by one. But actually, before we jump into that, I probably should show you the actual sketch. So this is what I actually started with. Let's take away the background and everything. Let me duplicate that, make it white so that we can see it. Okay, so this is actually where everything starts. And you can see I was actually, I was like doing like all these measurements and stuff, like trying to figure out exactly, you know, how Riven's face worked, you know, because the reason why we were doing these at Riot was because we wanted all of the splashes of the character and of their skins to look the same. Because sometimes Katarina would look a little bit different in, you know, one skin, and one artist would have a different interpretation of another one. So we all decided we wanted to sit down and be like, okay, this is Riven, this is Diana, this is Katarina, this is their face. So make sure they always look like this. And I, of course, I hand-selected, I plucked Riven for myself. I'm like, I will take care of Riven. Don't worry, guys. I got this handled. So I started with this. And this is basically how I get started, as I've said. So let's see. From here, basically, I wish I would have saved some more layers, but like an idiot, I flatten everything. So let's just go into, let's get back to the painting, right? Let's get back to the actual painting. And we'll talk about the planes of the face and how we basically went from that to this, okay? So the first thing, like I said, you want to think about is these major planes. Okay, so, and the reason why these are important is because these are the major points of the face where the planes will change and different parts of the light are going to be kind of being picked up and kind of reflected back at you, giving you a sense that the face is kind of rounding itself. If you'll notice, the place that the light is coming from is actually just right in front of her, right? Right in front of her face. This is a light pointing at us, or pointing at her, right? So it's just shooting straight down on her hair and on her face. So everything, it's very much kind of like those good old grade school photos you get. You know, you remember you get to pick your gradient background, and then they flash your face, and then the background will be all kind of glowy behind you. Look kind of cool. It's basically what we're doing here, same treatment. So the light is coming from here, but then also something that's very important to remember is reflected light. And reflected light is basically what kind of it helps round the edge all the way around. And you can see it's happening right here underneath the chin. It's happening on the sides of the neck. Because basically what I think about reflected light is without reflected light, you can only bend a shape so far. Like without reflected light, you can only bend, like see if you were to draw a line across her face, it would come down like this, and then you kind of go to this point, right? But then how do you kind of curve it back, you know, like curve it under, like we could see through her face and it's like going underneath her chin. And the way that you do that is by introducing this reflected light. Showing the reflected light shows that it continues to round, the shape continues to round. So it's very nice. And you'll notice, again, look at all the places where the reflected light can be found. You can see it underneath the nose right here. This is one of the most important places to place your reflected light because, again, it shows the rounding down and then, again, it goes under. And that's another plane of the face that we're going to talk about. Okay, but anyway, we'll get more into that in just a second. Let's get rid of this. So what I'm going to show you guys is a little bit of sort of a wireframe. And this is what I'm going to challenge you guys today to do. This is actually going to be your homework. I've supplied the link on the Facebook page to the high-res version of this ribbon picture. And what I want you guys to do is go on there and I want you to download this high-res version. It's just a JPEG. But what I want you guys to do is I want you to pull this up in Photoshop and I want you to draw basically this wireframe. And you can start with this, right? Just rewatch this video and draw in these areas, right? See, like these areas, all like where the light is being picked up and it gives the face its shape. I want to challenge you to draw these shapes in for yourself. And when you do this, it'll help you to understand, again, what the important things that are happening there. Okay, but anyway, okay, so I want to break this down before we get into the wireframe. Before we get into that, because that's kind of a little bit more, that's the second step. That's step 2. Let's focus specifically on the nose area, because this is one of the most important places. This is one of the most important things to do when you're thinking about a nose. And basically, I like to take the nose and I like to basically turn it into 2 different planes. So there's the underplane, which is right here. This is where all that reflected light is going to be hitting. And then you have the upper plane, right? So that's all this stuff right here. And then it kind of, you know, goes up into the bridge, okay? But something that's really, really important that I want you guys to notice is see how the nostrils come up and then they go down like that, and then all this light gets captured right here and here. This is one of the most important things that you can draw, like especially from this lighting scheme. This is one of the most important things to remember to paint. See how that shape is basically there? You see the edge of the nostril and then all this light is being captured right here. And then it kind of goes down to the muzzle of the mouth. And this was something that I used to not do. And it caused my characters to not look like, it looked like their lips were just really flat, like there's no flesh. Like even if you just look at your own face, you'll see that there's actually like a little bit of a muzzle or like a, you know, like your lips actually stick out from your face, right? And they do it in this shape. So it's really good to consider this its own shape. Almost like a sphere. Like see how the gradient is like light here and then it gradates this way? And it kind of, again, it rounds around, and then when it hits the shadow, we introduce our reflected light to round it all the way, right? Same thing over here, you know, just round it around all the way. And now she has a nice blue mustache. So mustache theory at work right now. So that's number 1. Let's go ahead and talk about the eyes, because I think the eyes are another really important thing to do. Same thing how those areas next to the nostrils will capture a lot of light. Same thing is going to happen here. This will be called the glasses theory. Basically, if you were to draw eyeglasses on your character, see how right where that line is as I erase it? See how that line still exists with this area of contrast? That's because there's a change happening here, right? There's a change happening with your eye, like the pocket of your eye, and then it's going up into the bridge of your nose. And this might be a good time to actually bring up the wireframe. The wireframe. Woo! All right. Yes. So what this is going to do, see all those same planes are still existing. I just drew a wireframe over it. And this is exactly what your homework is to do. I want you guys to draw these planes, and then, or these planes rather, and then I want you to draw a wireframe over her face. And hopefully that will kind of help educate you and help you kind of figure out a little bit more of what's happening with the depth of the face. Okay, so check this out. Check this out. So, like I said, the eyeglasses theory. The reason why this works is because, or the reason why this is happening is because right here you have this plane, it's going straight through here. In fact, let me lighten it a little bit. This is kind of a hard thing to explain, so I hope that you guys get it. I hope that I'm adding some value to this rather than just confusing you further. But see how this line is going straight through here and then it goes up, right? There's a change right here happening. It goes up and then it goes back down and then it goes straight again. And because of that change, because that change is happening, that is what is causing that shadow right there, okay? Take that away, see? See that triangle right there, that little triangle of shadow right there is happening because of the change of the plane. And then what's really cool is you'll notice I really like this shape right here. This is probably one of the biggest like revelations I ever had when I was drawing faces, was this shape right here. Coming from the nostril up like this and then going down, I almost think of it as like a band-aid. You know, like in animes how the cool characters have like a band-aid across their face? That's basically what I think about it as, because basically what's happening here is the shadow of your nose, or just like the flesh of your nose, is blending. It's basically like, I don't know exactly, yeah, it's basically blending into your cheek. It's not as hard of a transition as it is right here, right? Because there's this big pocket, you know, for your eye, and then it goes up into your nose. Whereas right here, it's a very smooth transition. Think of it as the skin is like stretched. It's stretched more over your cheek, so it's a softer transition. You're gonna have this hard edge, this hard thing. So I think about it as that you can almost see it. You can almost see it right in there, that little shape that exists right there. So that's one of the biggest things that I'm always considering whenever I'm drawing faces and drawing noses. So keep that in mind. Eyeglasses theory, the nose theory, muzzle theory, mustache theory. The other important things to think about are, I'm going to go ahead and emphasize, this right here, this shape right here. I'm going to tell you why I emphasize these lines. This line is one of the most important lines, other than all the other ones that I've described, to remember. And this is the cheekbone line. This is the cheekbone. And basically the way I think about it is it's this V. From your cheeks, you can even look at yourself and do this. You can draw a V straight from your cheekbones down to your chin. It's very interesting how that happens. And right where that line is happening, that is where your face is going to begin to round, right? It's almost like, think of it as like a block. Think of it as like a block, right? So this is the front of your face, right? And then if you were to draw it in perspective, you know, drawing the edges of your face, this is like your cheekbone, right? Or rather, we're doing it like a V. So that would be your cheekbone. Where the cheekbone begins is where your face begins to go back into space, into time and space, and begin its 3D departure. So always remember this V that's happening, and make sure to push, you know, like push the face back, and make sure you're communicating the shape and the depth of the face. And the way that you do that is, once again, look, see the transition right there? Look at that transition. See? Let me go to that. Okay, the transition is happening right there, right on that V. Again, we're pulling it back, and then it rounds once again underneath, showing the reflected light. Woo! Man, my voice is just like completely gone. What is up with that? Okay, so now that I've blabbed on and on and on about that, about some things, you know, regarding the face and geometrically showing it to you via wireframe, let me talk a little bit about how I even just got started, right? Because it's like, oh, okay, well, that's great. I can paint all this stuff. I know the planes of the face. But how do I just get started? How do I get started from back here, right? So I'm going to go ahead and give you guys a little bit of a tutorial on that, because we've only been going for 15 minutes, so we got time. I have given a few other tutorials on this, so please check those out. Just like painting faces. Adding color to a grayscale portrait will definitely help if you search that. But let's go ahead and get into this. So the first thing I do is, of course, I have my line art. I have my line art all set up. And let's go ahead and bring this up. I don't like to work with straight white on the background. I like to darken it down a little bit. Kind of makes it a little bit easier on the eyes instead of just like white, just blinding my eyes as I'm trying to paint. So I start with this, right? And what I start doing is I pick a proper skin tone, and I think about it as the darker version of the skin tone, right? So ribbon's kind of tan. So instead of being like, oh, tan is that color, we gotta bring it down, bring it down. Start with your dark, start with your shadows, paint the light on. I think painting the light on just makes it so much more easy, and it makes it feel more realistic. So let's go ahead and get started with that. First thing I do is I just lay down some quick masks. Kind of like this. Okay? And again, this is you working behind the lines. See, here's your lines. Layer 3. Right behind there is the mask. I hope this is working for you guys. Okay, so you start with something like that. Now let's focus on the skin. Let's focus specifically on the skin. We don't need to worry too much about the hair and all that. And I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how I do that. How I do it. How do you do it? Okay, so now that you've got your darks, what I want you to do is pick your lighter color. Pick your lighter color. And basically, I've said it many times before, the way that skin works is the shadows will be kind of in the reddish stage, right? It's going to be kind of saturated. Then as you add light to it, in general, it is going to hue shift a little bit towards yellow, and it's going to desaturate. So you might get something a little bit like this, okay? So remembering the planes of the face that we discussed, right? They're a little bit different because I moved her nose around. But actually, let's go ahead and fix that really quick. That way we can be sure that we are being properly proper. Go ahead and move those up. Okay, that's good. And I ended up moving her eyes in a little bit too because she kind of looked elfy. She looked a little too elven. Whatever. Anyway, okay, so thinking about these planes of the face, we are now going to construct our picture. Construct. Okay. So the first thing I like to do is I actually like to work with the soft brush in the beginning. I really do. And basically, you got your mask right there. Create a new layer, and then make it a clipping mask. And the way that you do that is just hold the Alt key and then click between those two layers. Basically, that makes it so that way you can't paint outside of this anymore, right? You can't paint out of the mask that you've already laid down. You've already laid down the law, and no one will dispute that. Okay, so first thing we need to do is remember, let's go ahead and light the whole kind of front of the face in general, keeping in mind that the cheeks, right? The cheeks are going to round off there. Very simple like this. A lot of light usually gets captured on the forehead area. So let's make sure we are getting that. Let's get something like that. A little bit of light on the nose. And then again, remember that pocket, right? This pocket of the eye catches a lot of light. And also, remember, this area of the nostril captures a lot of light as well. And then it kind of rounds out into the muzzle area. Okay? Now, we're starting to get somewhere. So you just kind of start like that, and then you notice how I'm just kind of blending it right in. Blending it. Just like that. Just like that with all that good stuff. So this is a good start. This is a good start. Then you might be wondering, Keenan, what about all these lines? What about, how do I get rid of those? What am I supposed to do about that? I will show you. Let's make sure we get a little bit of light on the chin as well. So you get something like that. Cool! We have begun the journey. Okay, so in general, whenever I'm painting faces, I usually like to just color the lines kind of like a dark red. Just makes everything transition a lot easier. And let's see, is that right? Maybe something a little more like that. Yeah, that looks a little better. And then what I'll actually do is I'll go in and I'll actually begin kind of erasing the lines. Erasing the lines just a little bit, especially in the places where we don't need it. Like we don't need these lines on the forehead. Just go ahead and get rid of that. Get rid of that stuff. Kind of starting to get rid of our lines, okay? You can also paint them. You can also color them. if you set up your lines in the way that I have done here, which is the right way to do it, sort of like an animation cell, you can go ahead and get that all squared away. I can tell her eyes already are gonna be a pain. I had a tendency, especially like, I always have a tendency to make the eyes a little bit large and a little bit too far apart. So I'm gonna go ahead and shrink them down a little bit and move them in. And look at that, the magic of Photoshop working to our advantage. Good. Good. And let's go ahead and just kind of fix up those lines really quick. No big deal. They don't have to be perfect because eventually we're going to paint over them all anyway. We're going to paint over the whole thing anyway. So don't worry too much about that. Okay. Now, okay, so you can very quickly see our picture is starting to take shape. Okay. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and just erase this entire line right there. And let's once again consult the planes of the face. See? We are progressing properly. We're capturing the light here and here. In fact, I'm just going to keep this up for a second. I'm going to go ahead and go in here and emphasize the things that we need to emphasize with our chalk brush. Let's emphasize there. You know, the nose usually has a nice specular on it. Let's get some nice light on the forehead there. Good. All right. So very quickly, now you can see, once again, see how that light is being captured right there? And it tells us, because this area of contrast is happening, it tells us that something is happening with this face. Something is happening with this face. So, yeah. Anyway, continuing. Let's go ahead and drop in some color on the eyes really quick too, as well. Now I'm actually using my chalk brush because I like to do blending. I really like to do blending with the chalk brush now because it's just freaking awesome. Unless you need like a really, really soft transition, I just say use the chalk brush. Use it. There we go. Okay. So now also I want to show you another technique to helping to get rid of your lines. And that is actually line coloring. Line coloring. So the way I'm going to go ahead and do this is, I'm just going to take the shadow color, I literally just eyedrop that, I'm going to drop it down a little bit, turn it a little bit more red. Okay? I'm going to go in here and just paint these lines like that. Maybe a little bit more red. A little bit more red. And again, this is going to also help us begin getting rid of our lines. Okay? So once I'm to a point that I'm kind of feeling it, looks good, I'm going to go ahead and start moving into the overpaint stage. Now this is where I basically start overpainting everything, right? So a couple things that you want to remember is this plane of the nose. Do not forget that. Okay, remember, separate it into two planes like that. Let's not forget also our reflected light. Reflected light happening here. Reflected light happening there and there. A little bit there and there. Simple things. Simple things. Ain't bad. We can go ahead and get rid of, like, your goal is to now begin obliterating your lines. Obliterating. And again, capture these harsh shadows by the eyes. I think this is one of the most important things to do. Nose looks a little weird. But whatever. It is a little bit harder to paint faces live than it is. I'm just chilling. And these are kind of older lines, so I probably would have, in all honesty, the way that I would have set this face up now, if I were to paint this over again, is I probably would have just painted it in grayscale, because I'm a cheater like that, and then just added color on top of it. But regardless, I'll still show you how I just go about doing it. Now another important thing to do, guys, and this is something that people constantly kind of forget about, and it is quite a travesty, is you must remember that while you're painting skin, look how I like sharpen that edge right there. Look, I just whoop like that. Now she has sharper cheekbones. But, however, a very important thing to do that a lot of people forget is to add pigment to your skin. Add pigment to your skin. Add a little bit of red in the areas where a lot of, blood vessels are, right? So like the cheeks also makes your girls look cuter. I like that a lot. In the nose area, do a little bit on the eyes and, neck and shoulders, stuff like that. Just the slightest bit of pigment will make a huge difference. Make a huge difference. And we like that. So that's number one. These lines right here are representing the eyelids. Also another thing that a lot of people forget about. Don't forget to draw the eyelids of your characters. They must be able to blink. Okay? Otherwise their eyes will shrivel up and they will die an agonizing, blinding death. You don't want that. Okay? Alright, in the meantime, while I thicken up Ribbon's eyebrows, she's looking a little bit more Asian in this version. Not that there's anything wrong with that. In the meantime, please cast your questions over the castle walls. Anything regarding facial features, stuff like that. All that good stuff. And then we will end day 152, and I will begin to finally regain my voice. Oh, I know where my voice is gone, because I was driving a lot today. I was driving a lot today, and I was singing in the car. I always do that. Every day that I would drive to work, when I was working at Riot, I would just, pop in my favorite CD, and I would sing all the way to work. And by the time I got there, my voice would always be gone. But luckily, I didn't have to talk to anybody, so nobody knew. But now that I have a show, my voice is gone. Oh boy, oh boy. Okay, questions. Questions coming in. Rempa Goda is asking, when I upload these things to the videos to YouTube, do I keep them on my hard drive or do I transfer them to a external hard drive? I actually transfer all of them to an external hard drive because very quickly videos pile up, hard drive gets eaten, and yes, all that stuff goes bye-bye. So that's basically how we get started. And, after spending 8 hours on it, then it begins to look like that, just like you can still see all of the like minute differences and details that go into it, It really just has to do with spending time and oftentimes like good references. Look at references of other people's faces. That will help you. Like that's how I found out about these things, like capture the light in the eye pockets and in the muzzle there. And it just helps you get all the little intricacies and subtleties of the face. That's hard to do if you're just drawing it from memory. It takes a little bit of technique and time and experience, I guess, to draw a face out of nothing. And constantly I'm always looking at reference. So don't be ashamed of having to look at reference. It will help you. It will help you. All right, a couple questions, and then we're ending. Oh, Burstcraft Gaming is asking about the eyes. The eyes. Yes, I can give you a quick. Demonstration on eyes. A couple things that I like to do. So the first thing that I like to do with eyes is I like to consider where the light is coming from. So since it's coming from the front, top. Basically, the way that the irises work is, you want to think of it almost like a satellite dish, right? So wherever the light is coming from, the opposite side of the iris is going to be picking up the light. So, much like this, right? The underside of the iris is going to pick up the light coming from up top, okay? So that's how you light it at first, right? Another thing that causes eyes to look kind of stuck out is people think of eyes and they're like, oh, well, eyes are white. So I should paint my eyes perfectly white, okay? And then they do this, and then when you're trying to paint a face, like, see how that makes them look like they're just like stuck on stickers or something like that? When in actuality, what's happening with eyes is they're being shadowed, right? They're in shadow from the eyelids. So they're actually going to be, in some cases, quite dark. But what really kind of pushes it to the limit, makes eyes look really cool, is going back in with your light source or whatever, and then adding a little specular that goes across the eye like that. And that, once you do that, it really starts to help create like a roundness of the eye. Makes it look like it's living. Look like there's actually tears wetting it. All that good stuff. So give that a shot. See if that helps you out. That's how I like to do eyes. Okay. Last question. Might be good. Insanely Xanter is asking, do you have any specific tips for rendering extreme exaggerated facial features in a fully painted style? Oh, this is a good question. Although I need to see if I have... Okay. Yes, I do have a good recommendation for that. What I think you're talking about is caricatures, or just like exaggerating the face. The best thing that I can tell you to do is get a reference of yourself actually making that face. Like if you have a webcam or something, like I will literally take pictures of myself. For example, when I was drawing these things for Pauldron, which is an indie game that I'm working on, an indie mobile game. Let me show you Marcus really quickly here. Here he is, right here. So you can see right here, here's Marcus. But then you have to ask yourself, okay, well, we got to draw these expressions of him, right? And it's like, how does this guy look when he's smiling? And normally that might be kind of a hard thing to replicate out of nothing, right? Like, how did I draw that? The way that I did it was I literally took pictures of myself. Okay, so here, look at these. That picture of me is what translated to that, right? Because what makes an expression is not necessarily just the person's face, right? The measurements, the relativity of their nose, the eyes, and all that stuff, that helps. But really, what makes it is like, whoa, I would have never thought that when I'm making this expression, my eyebrows completely cover my eyes. You can't even see my eyes, right? But it sells the expression so much more. My head is kind of tilted down, things like that. And then like there's me laughing. I'm just taking pictures of myself doing different expressions, and then I use these, right? And I'm holding my hair back because it's really long and it was in my face that day. So anyway, and then you can just look. Oh man, when I smile, these little the folds of skin appear there, and then I just translate that over to Marcus's face. So. And again, the lighting is all there, everything's there, just straight up just jacking the same exact photo and the lighting and all that stuff. And it creates an awesome final piece. It creates an awesome final piece, and it communicates what you're trying to do clearly. Alrighty then, peoples. I'd like to say thank you once again for joining me live on Twitch. As usual, people on YouTube, thumbs up if you like it, thumbs down if you don't. I feel like I haven't said that in a while. Have I not said that in a while? Thumbs up. I don't know, maybe I'm just tripping or something. Anyway, okay, final thing, once again, we are almost to 175 bucks on Patreon, and when we get there, everybody who helps me, I'm going to be sending out these prints too. So, just wanted to throw that at you one more time. And thank you guys so much. Like, I can't believe that we're almost like, oh, we're approaching $200. Like, oh, it's literally been like 2 weeks. 2 weeks ago, we were like at 30 bucks, and now we are approaching $200 a month for making Emma. Like, I don't even know what to tell you guys. Like, all I can do is just promise you guys and just tell you guys that I'm committed. Like, you guys already knew I was committed. The comic is going to happen whether you guys pledge or send your money or buy stuff or not, right? Because this comic is going to just be done. So the fact that you guys appreciate that, want to add value and just like support it and all that stuff, it really means a lot. But that can be another conversation for another time. Until next time, you guys take care of yourselves. I'll see you tomorrow for Whatever Wednesday, where I'm going to be drawing your characters. So submit it along with your homework to the Facebook, and I'll see you guys next time.